Welcome to the virtual staff room end user updates for May, of course. I know we're in June, but like Dave just said, we do them retrospectively and we collate them all, so you've got them all in one place to make life that little bit simpler for you. Quite a number, in excess of 20, I think. I can't remember the precise number now, that we've got to go through today, so I will crack straight on. There's a couple from last month. First of all, just in case you do have anyone using Currents, Google's Currents, then they're going to lose it very soon. Within the month, they're going to start to lose stuff. So if you can run a report, Dave told me that a couple of months ago. If you've got someone using them, do please make sure that they've taken everything out there that they might want. They can use takeout up till the 8th of August, but beyond that, they will not be able to get that data. So they just need to be aware. I think David is a large multi-academy trust and had, I think, 1 or 2, did you say, Dave? So it's a tiny number. So
yeah, I think that was me. I think I was the only one, and I just played about with it back in the day.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
No action needed on our behalf.
Yeah, okay. So it just to be aware. I mean, and that tells it all, doesn't it? You know, I think the usage. It was an attempt to make it look a little bit more like Facebook, wasn't it? And I don't think it ever really fully took off. It was never a very intuitive interface, I don't think. But there we go. If anyone does use it, make sure they've got the data out before the 8th. Next one. This is another reminder. A little bit of an update to it. We are not yet being forced to push all our reminders into Google Tasks. That will happen, and it's happening currently. Of course, the usual pattern, there's a 15-day rollout of most of these updates, but there's this reminder in the bottom corner. I'm now seeing that telling me that I've got the option to tick the button for it to update and push all my reminders into tasks, or to leave them there at the moment. So I suspect you may well be getting the same. And it's when I went to turn on my reminders calendar in my list of calendars that I got that reminder. So just to be aware that reminders inside calendar as are going, and they're going to become Google Tasks. If you don't sort them now and you are using them, they'll be moved automatically. So you might well get some questions about that. This I found really useful. The little picture shows that you're busy talking to a colleague, or you're going to send a chat to a colleague, and it tells you they're either still in a meeting until a particular time, or they're about to start a meeting. So you can be considerate of their time pressures and try and finish that a little bit quicker, just to give them a chance to take a comfort break or nip to the loo or whatever. And you'll see it starting to pop up in the chats. I don't know if you've noticed this happening, Chris. It's actually really handy to know. Because of course, your time is valuable, isn't it? So you want to be able to be respectful of other people's times and to be able to manage your own better. So when people know you're in a meeting or things, it's really handy to know. So that's a great. Go on, Chris.
Just on that, Jamie asked me to set a quick meeting up for me and him, and yeah, that came up straight away. And warned me that he was in a meeting when I was trying to set one up, and it kind of just gave me that, and it allowed me to give, like you say, 10-minute grace period or whatever, so that I could set one up afterwards. So yeah, really useful. I've used that already. Yeah.
Steve, does your organization use chat?
I'm beginning to try and use it a bit more. One of the things that I really like that, because it's very useful, but one thing we're conscious of, if we're going to ask teachers to use it a lot more, is what we do with the notifications that come up in the corner, if they're projecting on the board at the same time. So because although it's great that chat says to someone, or they're in a meeting, whatever, it doesn't necessarily stop someone sending a message. But what I really want is for Google to check if they are in a meeting or there is a calendar appointment or something, for it to automatically put them into do not disturb mode. It's just like the next step of that would be quite useful for us. But it's just thinking out loud, really. That's a definite benefit. Don't get me wrong. I really like that as well. But it'd be nice if Google went one step further too.
Yeah, but actually, that sounds to me like a feature request. You know how that works in either the question mark or the help menu. Start making a feature request, and I think that's a really good idea. One that would make a big difference, doesn't it? For it to label it, AI to work out, oh, they're in a meeting, so let's just make them unavailable.
Yeah, I think I did request it, but I can't remember now. Sometimes you do enough of them that you forget which ones you've done. Yeah,
I suspect it'll be an option to turn on. Because I think there might well be times when you are in a meeting, but you're taking a much more passive role, so you are able to still take messages, and some people might and some people might choose to do that. So it might be it's an option to turn on rather than it being a default setting. But yeah, I
You
mean, it's really
can
useful.
You
Go on.
can schedule do not disturb. So it's not automatically linked to your calendar, which I agree would be a good setting. But you can schedule do not disturb. So if it's for teachers and they have a relatively fixed timetable, then it may be something that they can set up once, and that will prevent those pop-ups coming up in the bottom right, as you said. So to do that, you need to go into your mail, into Gmail, into your settings, and then into chat, and then manage chat settings, and that gives you the option to, if you scroll down to set do not disturb schedules.
I don't. Yeah, see, I've seen that before as well, but obviously not every teacher teaches every lesson. If we want people to start using chat, then we want it to notify them when they're not teaching. It's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, really. But it's giving them the options and the flexibility to make that decision themselves, isn't it? Really, but it would be really useful because we put their timetable into their calendar, we sync it from the MIS, so that timetable is already in there, including things like PPA and stuff, and line management meetings. So if it could do it automatically, that would be the pinnacle.
Yeah, and I think you can do something similar with Google Voice. Google Voice will check your calendar. So Google's obviously got the code in the background to do it. That only works on Android though, which is frustrating when you've got users on Android and iOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it would be a good addition. But I just thought if your teachers do have fixed timetables, they could at least it's a set up once a year job, isn't it? But it's when they then get moved into cover lessons and the like that it can be problematic.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yes, absolutely.
So more work for Google, but a step in the right direction. We're getting there in small steps. Okay, moving on then. This I think is long awaited. There's a couple of updates. I think last month, if you've got the updates from last month, I actually published all the updates that Google had been pushing out to chat and Spaces over the last 12 months, and there's loads of them, and loads more still to come, because I think they want to. It's about that, the workflow and the priority of them, isn't it? And we do sometimes use them for important messages, although I think if it's important, I more often will phone one of my colleagues if I possibly can and they're available. But it's moved conversations that would have been in Gmail into chat, and you treat them in a different way. They're kind of like the shouts across an office if we were all in the same location type thing very often. And it's nice that we've got that. So the fact that there's all this new functionality coming in, so you can actually reference directly from a previous message, which you couldn't do. It's not on ours. It's not on all our hours. I think some of our old chat Spaces are still on the old version, so they've yet to be converted, which is going to happen later on in the year. But it is appearing on some of them, so you can respond to previous comments, and it allows that the logic of the thread rather than having to scroll up and down, which makes it that little bit more convenient. And I think there's another announcement about that little pop-up when you hover over the chat messages in a minute. I think might be the next one.
Paul, can I just ask, me, I'd like to ask at least one stupid question during these meetings.
Chris, you must remember there's no such thing as a stupid question. It's just a question.
Not at all. I love chat. My one problem with chat is because I'm 24/7 into emails and I'm forever pressing the enter button in an email to get to the next line and then hitting the send button. I keep pressing the enter button all the time in chat and it sends the message. Is there a way of changing the enter so it doesn't send the chat message? Because I keep saying, hi Steve, enter, and it sends a message. I end up sending about 10 messages. I don't know whether there's a way of making it so that I have to press the arrow rather than pressing enter to actually do that. That might be daft. I don't know.
There might be a keyboard shortcut you could program. I don't know about that, but what I do know is if you instead of pressing enter, press shift enter, it goes to a new line.
Ah, right, okay. That's quite handy as well, especially when you're copying and pasting. I sometimes copy other people's emails in there and it drops it in, and then I'm spacing to get it on a new line, so I can use shift and enter to get that set on a new line. So when I send the links to these videos and the slide decks when they're ready for you to send out, I put one on each line and I use shift enter, and then you've just got single just enter just to do the send. Okay. I don't think there is a way to force a different keyboard press to delay that. So I need to get into a different mindset then when I'm using chat. Shift is your friend in there. Yeah, but it's quite important. Yeah, the kind of the rich text formatting within there is relatively poor, isn't it? You can't do a great deal, but shift enter will give you multi-line
chat messages before
Yeah,
you
I
press
think-
the enter on your phone.
I think, like you say, if it's a proper sort of formal kind of message, then I'd always use the email for that. But if it's a general, Paul, how do you do this, or whatever it might be, just a sort
Control
of general
V.
chit chat. Yeah, Control C, Control V. Yeah, then it tends to be chat, and we are using it, like you say, in an increasing way within
absolutely.
C-Learning. Mm.
So next one, thank you very much for that, Chris. Sorry, I should have said that. Thank you very much for that. Bard is in your additional services early access apps in the admin panel now, and you can go and turn it on for yourself for your domain apparently. So the request went out to I was reading through, I did this last week, and I did this slide and completely missed that was there and forgot to ask for it. So I asked for it this morning. So hopefully Cisco's turned it on now. I'm assuming it will appear in your waffle button in the 3x3 grid of buttons, dots, to see if it's in there, but it might be that you'll have to scroll down to find it once it's turned on. And like lots of settings in the admin panel, I never quite understand the logic. Some of them are instant and some of them take between 24 and 48 hours. I don't quite know what needs to happen at Google's end for those differences, but it's now there and it's now available for you. And I'm assuming it works like all the apps that are in there, so you can turn it on by OU. So you could turn it on for your teachers to allow them to use it to save them time, and not turn it on for your students if you're worried that they might misuse it or whatever. So you've got that control, which is great. Good or bad, AI is here to stay, isn't it? It's a really odd, isn't it, that we're having all these conversations about AI now, but it's been here for a while, and we've kind of let it slip in and not noticed it when it just does a job in the background without asking us permission. But all of a sudden, when we've got the option to interact with it, and you can do, this interface that will do all sorts of other things, there are conversations we're having now that we should perhaps have had when it first started to appear as a little tool in the background doing little tasks before we got to there. We might have been a little bit more prepared, but discussions to be had, I think. But great that we've got Bard, and you're able to turn it on. So like I say, apps, additional Google services, early access apps, like all of these things, it might not yet be there because it might well be it's all part, you're not quite through that 15-day rollout period for that particular piece of functionality. So just be patient, and it should appear fairly soon. These are all updates from May, so if it was very late May, it might be 10th, 12th of June before it actually appears. So just be patient. This is an interesting one. I reread it a number of times, thinking I've always had a spam folder, because I actually misread it as Google Mail. I'm thinking, what's going on? Because I don't think I've ever had a spam document that, to my knowledge, that has automatically appeared in my Google Drive. And I went and checked, and the spam folder is empty. So I'm not quite sure, and someone might be able to enlighten me, I might just be being dim here, how it comes about that you get a document into your Drive that you kind of not getting alerted to inside your email. But I don't even remember someone being spammed with a document I wouldn't want in my email, but that's because we've got everything set up really well. But the fact that it's there, if they do arrive, is good, and the fact that you can report it is good. Dave, do you want to say something?
Yeah, just quickly on that one. It's a way we've had students trying this back in the day, whereby they turn off notifications when they're sharing something, because they think that then allowed them to avoid any kind of audit trail that they're the one that shared a document, and inside the document is their payload, shall we say, whatever it is that they want to share.
Right.
So I suspect that this is the case also with people who want to put. I mean, an example there is that 123 Open Me. They're putting something in there and trying to get people to open it from within the shared with me folder, so you won't get the notification to say that the document's been shared with you. But these weird people who insist on using shared with me, then they might be. That was one of the biggest things that we struggled with, trying to train people that you don't need to try and organize your shared with me folder. Just ignore it is my advice. I'd love to be able to hide it, but people can actually share things with you without sending you a notification. And the curious people would go, "Oh, what's this document that's been shared with me by Bobby Hacker?" And potentially click on something, and within there could be a link to something that's dangerous.
Yeah, no, excellent. Right, thanks for that. And wasn't Bobby Hacker a singer in the 50s?
I'll have to take your word for that, Paul. You being a young whippersnapper of an early career teacher in the 50s.
Harsh, but I deserve that. Okay, so so it all happens you've got reporting options. That's the key thing, I think, as well. So that, you know, if someone does become aware of something in there, then you can also alert, you know, yourselves like Dave, so he can then respond accordingly and do any kind of triage on that he needs to do. So that's the key thing. So that is a good thing. And thanks for the clarification on that. That's really useful. Okay, and I don't know if you're aware that if you're using Google Gmail and Google Calendar, whether you've noticed this, we get all sorts of strange behaviors when we're working with new customers who are still on Outlook and things like this, where we get double emails from acceptances for invitations. Some don't seem to get through. So I think there's still work to do, but there have been improvements. So the interoperability between Microsoft's Outlook Calendar and Google Calendar is now going to improve. And there's a series of kind of better services that they actually get. So the Outlook user will now get Google Calendar within their Outlook, which is great, and they'll be able to respond accordingly. And anything that's generated in Outlook, if the invitation was created in Google Calendar, to make sure the guests Outlook don't miss events. So it's just about reducing that. If we start getting one email notification of an acceptance of an email of an event rather than two, that would be a bonus for me. But let's just see how that happens. So it's just about the interface between those two calendars improving all the time, and really important, because I think even schools that are committed to Google, you know, the last step, because of the size of the step, is often moving from Outlook to Gmail, because it's a really big. Okay, there's a little message from me in there about what you've got to do once Bard's there. So it's on, and just got to accept the terms and conditions. Usual terms and conditions. You agree to, you know, donate your firstborn child and all your internal organs and your bank account details. It's just a standard Google terms and conditions with Bard there. So there we go. Oh yeah, here's the other. I mentioned this. This isn't on our domain yet, but your most recently used kind of emojis will start to appear as options to select when you now hover over messages in your chat streams and Spaces streams. So as well as the option to respond to an individual message, you can also now go with your most commonly used emojis, which is really just it's a fractional improvement in the workflow, isn't it? It just makes that laugh to respond that little bit quicker. So all good, you know, fractions of moments all add up to make your working day that bit more efficient, I think. So that's a good thing. So you can now create custom blocks in Google Docs if you are on Education Plus. So I'm assuming you've seen the @ symbol that with all the options that you can do, that there are ready-made templates like email templates. There's now a calendar template, which I'll mention in a moment, and like, you know, task tracking tables that you can automatically insert. You can then customize those, and if you're on Education Plus, you can then save that customized version as your own template or building blocks template, so you can actually then go back and use it. So if you've got, you know, I don't know, upgrades to your, you know, I presume you're planning busily about your upgrades you're going to be doing for over the summer. If you want a task sheet for the various things that are going to happen in all your different schools and colleges over the summer with your tech team, then you might well want to choose a pre-built table that allows them to check and track all the tasks, so you can keep check of what's going on and what progress is being made. So for whatever reason you might choose, you can now create custom blocks and then call on them again, and they'll just appear in there, and you've got the option to manage them and decide what you want to do with them and give them names and things. So that's a nice little thing. I mean, the app, I use the app all the time because it's just so much quicker, because you're already at the keyboard. I've got to keep moving back to my mouse and keyboard mouse. So like, I'm using my mouse less and less really, because it gives me the option to get things sorted that little bit quicker on the screen. So the @ symbol, if you're not, you know, making your staff aware of it, I certainly would be pushing that big time, because it just does more and more things. And there's a few other things in there, that a few other things I'll mention in a moment about the @ symbol as well. So this is a brand new piece of functionality. They tell me in the blurb that this is a much requested feature. It's not one that I ever thought that I particularly needed, but there we go. So if you are, and it only works in pageless mode. So if you've got a standard page with page breaks on the screen, then it doesn't work. You've got to change it to pageless mode. But once you have on pageless mode, if you've got headings in there, the headings have a little expand and collapse arrow on the left. It allows you to expand and collapse the various headings. there's a number of elements to this, isn't it? Certainly in the training I do, I'm aware that a significant number of users that I train don't use headings. No, they don't use the preset headings. They'll make headings. They'll highlight a piece of text and make it bold and make it larger and all that kind of stuff. But they don't tend to use the preset headings. And this only works on the preset headings. So there's kind of two elements to the training. One, to let them know that it needs to be paid custom mode if you don't use that. Two, to let them know that there are all the preset headings that will show you this behavior if that's something that they actually want. I do use the summary on the left because I use headings a lot, and then each heading then becomes a bullet point on the left when you've got the document summary, and I use that to navigate on large documents. I found that really, really useful, and it's a similar kind of functionality to that. One thing to note is if you are a viewer or a commenter, the collapsing headings do work, but they won't be saved. So if I was the editor and I collapsed all of them and one of you came to join the document to have a look at it, you would see the view I left it in. Whereas if a viewer or a commenter makes any changes to that, then you won't see their view, the state they left it in when they leave. So theirs don't persist. It's just for them, which is worth knowing. But I'm sure it's a functionality that some people will use without doubt. I'm sure I will have a proper play, so maybe I'll have a different view once I've had a chance to have a proper play. So this is another smart chip, which I think is a good idea. I'm not sure that I was trying to think if we've ever actually done this. It basically gives you the chance to insert a Google Calendar event inside a Google Doc in the same way that you can insert a Google Gmail template inside a Google Doc and write the entire Gmail in the document, and then you click the Gmail button top left and it goes and opens it in a Gmail window, and then you can send it. With this you can do the same, so you can actually create a calendar invite inside using the @ symbol again inside of Google Docs. All those people who are editors on that document can then edit that document and write in anything that they want to write in. And then when you're ready to post it to your calendar, you click the calendar icon and it goes to your calendar. So if that is a workflow that you do, and that's a really nice, neat way of doing it if you're doing it. And it could be that, again, if you're doing a big project that requires lots of meetings on a regular basis, you might want to set them all in there, and various people would need to put information in there before you actually click it to kind of formalize the invitation out to all the people that would need to know they had to attend that meeting and things. So I'm sure there's use cases for it, but it's part of that further development of the @ symbol inside Google Docs that allows you all those really useful tools within Google Docs. So that's now there. So if you are using smart chips in Google Sheets, you can now start to extract out the information from them, which is really neat little thing. And the example that they've given here, this was a count unique, and you just put the reference that these counting unique, but then you actually put in information, a kind of another identifier, another variable at the end. In this example, it was location, and it pulls out the location for that particular smart chip. And it just seems to me like a really neat way of doing it if you need to extract out information from people. I presume it's all dependent upon, as you see, it says name, for example, location, phone, and title. If those things aren't in the directory, I suspect they won't present in this sheet. So it's all relying on how well the individual organization manages their directory. And it's certainly the case that that's a very mixed bag from our customers' perspectives, because we get all sorts of kind of names popping up for people, everything from admin when it's their main account and no longer an admin account that they use properly, to just Mr. Smith and no other kind of naming information. So it's how they use the directory and what they put into the directory is what gets pulled out here. So but potentially quite a nice little bit of functionality to use should you need to use it. And those are the kind of fields that you can pull out. The one or two others on the left, on the right of this little GIF, you can see MIME types and things, URLs and things. So there's other stuff you can pull out should you want to, but they're the kind of the main ones. So that's that one. Another new chip arriving in Google Docs. You could put a timer in there. I think a timer could be a really useful tool if you're doing a reading practice, or you just want someone to know how long they've spent on a particular task. Yeah, just set it going and say count the minutes. You set a, you know, a 1 hour timer and tell them to start it when they start and stop it when they stop, and just do a quick calculation. So it could be, or say you've got 5 minutes to read this, kids, set the timer going, 5 minutes of silence or whatever, if you're having silent reading, whatever. You've also got other time locators in there, so you can now go at today or at tomorrow, or, and this one of course is the at stopwatch. Steve, yeah.
When you say Google Docs, do you mean just Google Docs, or do you mean like Google Slides as well?
No, I don't think any of these are in slides. I haven't tried these in sheets. I'm not tested in sheets. I don't know. So smart chips are in slides, not in slides, in docs and in sheets. And I've just said that I never actually. I'm sure I don't see the logic of a smart chip in a Google slide deck, so I don't think they're in there.
Something like the timer might be useful because that's what teachers will present in. That's all. But
oh, I see. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, if you're using your presentation, your speaker notes, you've got a timer in there, so they can see that if they're using split screen. They've got that option. Yeah, and there are timers online, aren't there, that they can use in the slide deck. So yeah.
Clay Smith did an add-on, as Clay tends to do when people ask him for things like this, that allows you to put timers inside of Google Slides documents. So there is definitely an add-on for that.
Yeah, Clay Smith is a Google innovator, Google trainer, probably a Google coach now, but now works for Google in the New York office, I think. So yeah, good, excellent. So another smart chip there. Slides and not slides, docs and sheets, and that's for everyone. This is quite nice in Google Sites now. You've always been able to add alt text to images that you inserted. That's always been there, but the background images and the headers and any logo. So if you've got the school logo on a Google site, you can actually have alternative text. And if you're not sure what alt text is, it's the text that a screen reader will read. Because if you haven't put alt text in there, it will just say image. So the person that needs the screen read out to them has got no idea what the image is of. So it's really important that wherever, you know, there's wherever there's a document where you don't know who the audience is, whether it's a site or a slide deck or anything, then you need to be thinking about encouraging your users to put in alt text. So if anyone needs to use a screen reader, then they get proper information about what that particular image is of. And you can do it for all of those things now. Like I say, you'd always been able to do it on images, but you can now do it on the background images and on the headers and on any kind of logo that you put into it. So that's kind of quite neat. We're still waiting for lots more functionality in Google Sites. Dave and I often have this conversation. Page level permissions, back there again. But anyway, so when you first join Google Chat, there's a redesigned interface that just gives you a few more hints and tips. If you go and have a look now, it probably won't be there because it now knows you're no longer a new user of Chat, so it's probably gone beyond that time. But anyone that's new to it, the onboarding process means you've got a nice new screen with some more suggestions about Chat and Spaces and the apps that you can attach to Google Chat. And that list of apps is extending. We've made some announcements, I think last month or the month before, about, and I think it was HubSpot and Salesforce are now much more integrated into Chat. So you can see if you use HubSpot for your ticketing system or whatever, then that will integrate in there. You can reassign tickets to other people within your organization and that kind of stuff. So, but this is just about when they first arrived, this is what they're presented with, just an option to a few little help buttons to guide them to a better and more efficient usage of Google Chat that little bit quicker. So that's nice to see. So variable chips, I checked this morning because I understand what a variable is. I understand how a variable works. So you mark a variable, then it reads off another thing to change the value of a variable, or you can change the value of a variable and other things change. I understand how that works, but you can now create a variable chip. And the example that they gave was like if you're doing invoices or you need to put different values into a document on a regular basis, then you can basically create a variable, pop it in there, and then when you come to do the document, it must therefore read. It just looks like a placeholder that says, I don't know, first name. And what I couldn't do, because it's not available on our domain yet, is I couldn't look at, well, once it does say first name, where does it read that from? where I couldn't work out where I put in that document information that to tell it to read from this data source and change that first name to a first name of that particular person. That's what I haven't quite got my head around, but I presume that's what it will do. You'll specify a data set somewhere where it goes, whether it's your directory or your contacts, or I'm not quite sure, but you can now create a variable. So it means that when you change that variable, that value will change throughout the whole document. But the logistics and the workflow of it, I don't quite know whether there's a set of variables at the top somewhere that you can hide, and then you put the variable chip reference in the body of the document. I'm not quite sure, but watch this space. It was late in May that was announced, so hopefully, so by mid-June we'll have a look, and I'll mark it to go through it and demonstrate it when we do the July one, because I think my sense is it looks like it could be really useful for, you know, doing multiple versions of a document if you've got those variable chips. But until I can see the workflow, I'm not really fully sure exactly how it's going to work. But they're coming soon if they're not there already for your domain. But I should say, sorry, Education Plus, only in Education Plus. So I don't know if you've had a go at this. If you put in information about the start and end of a task, and then, you know, what the actual task is in a Google sheet, you can convert it into a timeline like a Gantt chart. And this is just a few more updates to how that will work. So you can kind of collapse parts of it so it's a little bit easier. You can merge bits together, and the print and download has had an improved kind of interface, so you can print it and make the look of it a little bit better if you need to do the printing of that bit. So that's some updates to that kind of Gantt chart functionality. They call it the timeline view, but it's basically looks like a Gantt chart if you're aware of what those are inside Google Sheets. You've got to put, it's quite long-winded, I think. You've got to put the start time, end time, and the actual task in there, you know, already, and then once it's already in, then you press a button to. So I suspect there are probably slightly better tools that will allow you to do that a little bit quicker, you know, that are built for those kind of project management tasks. But the functionalities there should you use it. Okay, over the last 18 months, there's been quite a number of these client-side encryption options that have appeared in chat, which is kind of quite, you know, good that you've got that little bit higher level of protection. So from August 22 was when the original announcement arrived, but it now also includes in-call messages. So all the messages that would have happened in this chat now, we could actually encrypt them on our side, and that encryption of course means that we specify using which encryption tool we choose to use, that they're the people that help us manage the encryption, and it means that Google couldn't then also get to those documents because we have encrypted it. So we actually protect it from Google themselves. So if, you know, you're in a very sensitive meeting that has to be for online for whatever reason, you know, a disciplinary or a child at risk conference with, you know, social services and other external agencies and things, you might want to encrypt it all. So it does take, I've mentioned it to teachers, you know, in the user interface thing, because actually they need to be aware of that, because if they're having a sensitive meeting, they might need to request that from you, but it does require some setup from you at your side. And Education Standard, of course, which is the security version of the paid Google Workspace subscription, and Education Plus, where you get all the bells and whistles. So also better reporting, again, Education Standard, Education Plus, better reporting of inappropriate messages. If you get any, again, it requires you to do some setup, but again, it's important that you know that your users are able to do it. And the black box is just reminding me that you can also do the same reporting of inappropriate messages inside your Android devices as well. So you've got easy ways to report if there are any concerns raised about people being inappropriate in a chat space. So that's all good. That's that one. I've not done a picture of this because I suspect that these are tiny refinements. They've just made the email notifications that come from Classroom into your inbox that little bit better, chosen clearer language, a little bit of that clearer focus on the actual actions, and easier access to notification settings, so you can go from there into the settings to make any changes. So if you're getting messages from a Classroom that you don't want, there'll be a link that will take you straight to that Classroom settings, so you can change your global settings, so you can change that particular class that you don't want to receive messages from anymore. So it's just a little bit of tiny improvements to the workflow of the notifications you get from Google Classroom. There were some last month or the month before, I can't remember which now. So you can actually respond within Gmail with comments from Google Classroom, but before that, a notification, you couldn't do it quite so easily. So a few improvements in that area there, which is good. There's a whole load. I've literally just sent you the link. Those staff who will love this kind of thing will love it. It's a Marmite things, isn't it? You know, people that love Google Sheets love Google Sheets. Those who don't. But there are now a whole load of keyboard shortcuts available to you, and actually also the option to make some of your own should you want to. And you've always been able to do that. If you've recorded a macro, you could assign that to an available Google keyboard shortcut. Clearly, there are some that you can't, so you couldn't use Control P because that's already taken for another function. So those that aren't used, you're allowed to assign a macro to anyway. So they've extended it further that other things that are not necessarily a macro that you might want to do, you know, frequently within your sheets, you can assign a keyboard shortcut to. So I'll leave you to explore that if you've got, you know, users in your organization that would love that particular piece of functionality. And they improved the option last month to be able to move things a little bit easier in your Google Drive, and this is just a slightly faster way to organize the options that you've got, should you want to. And it's on the three dots when you're kind of searching through your Google Drive to see if you can't find a particular document. It just gives you the option to organize. I think it's a little bit better. Okay, so you see them that bit sooner. I think it gives you the option to move it to the top. So that's that one. And this was, I was surprised at this one because it's not something that I'd ever even thought about. And I was trying to think, well, where might this well be a useful thing? If your, you know, senior leadership have got PAs, for example, and they not only manage their inbox and their calendar, but they might also manage the contacts that go with that. I think this could be a really useful tool for them if they haven't currently got that option. So if they have got delegated access to their, you know, the senior leadership's contacts, for example, they can organize all the contacts. They can put people in there. They can add them to a label. Because don't forget, once you've got a label, you know, I know, finance at, then the person you're managing those contacts for can then use that as a shortcut email. So rather than typing in all the finance team, they can actually just write finance at, you know. And I know you can make these in the admin panel, and that example might already exist, but it just allows you to create some groups of your own within your own email, within your own contacts that the person you're managing those for can make use of should they need to. So that's kind of quite nice that you can actually do that. And I use I've got mostly our groups are already set, like I suspect yours are, but I've got some groups of my own. If we're doing a particular project, I will sometimes put all the people involved in that project into a group email within my own email that I can use then, just because it makes life that little bit simpler for me. So if someone is managing their inbox and calendar, then you might want to think about extending it to the contacts so they can actually also manage that for them as well, because they have a bit more control. So I think this is in here as an announcement because I think it was going to happen sooner than this, because we seem to be moving close to this being organized. But this is about all the old versions of chat spaces that are currently called what we're calling inline threaded, and they will be pushed into the conversation topic view, and the picture on the screen is of a conversation topic view. So if you're responding to an individual message, if you click on it, then you get that third window, the thread window on the right there, that allows you to respond and have a conversation that other people can also join to about a particular thread, rather than all the conversations being in the main thread. So it just keeps it a little bit neater. And then when other people arrive, you can see on this one that they know that messages have been an individual chat thread has been responded to, and it tells them how many comments there were and things, so they can click into that and they will see the same thing. So it just makes it a little bit nicer organization, because I don't know your experience of chat spaces particularly, once they get big, finding a previous chat to carry on a speed conversation is sometimes really hard, because the screen is not easy, doesn't lend itself to accessing earlier chats if you suddenly thought of something and you need to pick a comment up and something. So that this is good that this is going to happen. I'd sooner it happened sooner, but we have to wait, don't we? So but they'll be here by the end of the year. And when they do arrive and they're imminent, of course, I will announce them in the virtual staff room. I don't know if either of you are Trelson users, or if you've had a trial. I did speak to our kind of demo master who does all of these, and I asked if she's got any updates, because we were talking generally about the virtual staff room, and she's got a few basically that happened this month that she wants to include. And all I've done is, because they came late on Friday, I said, well, I'll put them in this week, and then if she continues to send me updates, I'll spend a little more time reviewing them so I can inform you a little bit more. But the reading guide is a reading guide for the user. So once you've set the exam going through Trelson and the student is in it, if you've got ways to allow them to have a reading guide, should they want to use that. And the option to print the documents and to preview them is now got an update. Feedback, of course, is crucial, isn't it? And there are now improvements to that, and there's a help page all about that. And then the whole thing about the pins, and it's a pin that you can use the pin to start it. If it gets paused, you can have a pin to start it, pick it back up again. You know, if there's a fire alarm and you all have to leave and things, you can lock it with a pin and then come back to it, and it saves the time, so you don't lose any time. It just carries on when you log back in with a pin and things. So if you're aware of that, if you're not aware of it and you think, oh, what is Trelson? Trelson's an assessment tool that allows you to manage online assessments. You run it through a Chromebook or a device, and it will lock the device out. You can decide whether students get extra time for the test if they have particular needs. You can give them allow or disallow, or turn off a spell checker. Yeah, you can have a screen reader. You can assign documents in there that they can go and look at and use as part of the exam and things. So it's a great tool. And if you are interested, I'm sure Chris will be more than happy to share further details with you if it's not something you've thought about before. These have been here a little while, but I thought this is, and it might be a little bit late. I should have done it probably early in the year. You might well be, in the process of wondering about refreshes to your suite of Chromebooks, and these are just two links to information about one, ChromeFlex, that allows you to refresh your old devices, and two, the latest devices that are available to you. This is actually on the Teacher Centre. And it's been there for quite some time, but they've just refreshed it, and it's like the very latest versions now. So if you're wondering what's the product that you ought to think about buying as a refresh for your students that are coming up in September, and you've not yet done that, then you've got links to take you there to have a look at those should you want to do that. And we just thought it's probably, like I say, I should have done maybe a couple of months early, because you're probably more organized than that. But if you are still thinking about it, you've got the links there should you want them. So then the last update for the year, for 22-23 school year, will be Monday the 3rd of July. So do please come along, make that note in your diary. You'll get reminders, of course, from Chris, as always. He will send out the links to the videos if you want to share them with colleagues, and to the slide decks, once I process them and once it's come back to me in my inbox. And those are the updates. 28 slides. That's a lot for 1 month, isn't it? Any thoughts, any questions?
I was just going to chip in, Paul. You mentioned about those custom building blocks earlier. I don't know whether you were going to do a 10-second demo or.
Oh no! Now you're asking me.
Right? have I accidentally put you on the spot here?
Let's see. Let's see what we can do. I'm amongst friends.
Apart from me, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. So here we go. Oh, it's still loading. Just give it a second to load. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go with the meeting here. You can see I've just put the @ symbol as before. These are all your. Well, let's look at the calendar event draft. Let's do that one. So we can see what this one looks like. So there we go. I'm going to add Chris in as the party guest member. And Ian. I would invite you, Steve, but I don't know your email up by heart, I'm afraid. So you can. So, but if you haven't seen the smart chip, I put smart chips in for the users, and you can see already it's saying a minute you've invited people, but they aren't actually involved. I don't show that again, but I am going to. I'm going to. I should go and share first. Wait. Share. So I'm going to make you all editors. So I mean, not like we don't know how editing starts. So you should all be able to get in there now. You've got an email notification telling you that. Paris is the, heaven's sake. So once you're in there, you can add some stuff in if you want to, you lot. Actually, I've just realized this probably isn't a good one to use as a chip because it's going to be fixed, isn't it? Can I do it? More actions. No, the calendar one. I'm thinking I'll do the calendar one because it's new. I'm going to get rid of that and go for one of the other ones. Let's go with meeting notes. No, not meeting notes. Hearing me. Building blocks. Put a roadmap. That one will do. There we go. So we've got the tasks. Task 1. Task 2. Oops. Okay. Where's my custom building block gone? I need to do that. It's not even giving me building blocks. I'm in the wrong account here. There we go. Custom building blocks. Does that allow me to do it now? Oh, I see. You've got to build one from scratch rather than use one of theirs. Ah, right. Okay, that's useful. I'm glad I did this now. All right. Select the content that you'd like to save as a custom building block. So I've selected it, so it already gives me the option to save. Then my custom building block. You can put it in the description. Okay. So then, there we go, insert, building blocks, custom building blocks. Come on. It's working now. Did it give me anything? There we go. So now it's in the menu, but I can actually go to the @ symbol again, and it just starts to type its name, and it just appears. So you can actually add in tables that you've already pre-built for whatever task you might need to do by creating them. Don't forget, it's education plus only, so it gives you a flavour there. Terrible demo. But I'm sure you'll remember all the good bits and not necessarily that. Okay. So any thoughts or questions about either that terrible demo and that I shouldn't have even tried it without being prepared, or any comments about any of the other functionality, or any questions about anything that you're not aware of?
I think the building blocks are a good idea. I think there's elements of it that I think personally I would probably do through using forms or other tools, but I guess for organizations that aren't comfortable using some of those other tools, it brings everything inside of Docs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
An example that I've used when I was explaining it to somebody else is if you wanted to do, if you had a meal booked or something like that and you wanted to get starter, main course, whatever it may be, you could build that and just copy and paste it, create it as a block and then put it in for each department or for each individual and have them kind of overseeing the creation of it. I think it's another one of those tools it's a solution that's looking for a problem at this stage in my head, but I can see some potential there. Yeah, I like the idea. There are times when I found myself copying large swathes of a document and and changing certain elements of it. So to create it as a building block in that respect might be beneficial.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I also think that there's some of the tools like a building block might be the way to do it. I mean, I think like documents that need to be read. Yeah. So having a table of the people who need to read that document and assigned, you can do you can assign a checkbox to an individual. So to build a kind of a table with those checkboxes in, and then assign it to that individual. So you've got at the top of a document, there's a health and safety document that they've got to read, or a child protection document that they need to declare, well, I have read this document. Still doesn't check that they've read it, but it checks that they're declaring that they read it, which kind of is the best that we can hope for sometimes, isn't it? So yeah, I think that it's definitely. I think you're quite right. I'm not convinced it was necessarily something that everyone was clamoring for. Well, I certainly wasn't. People sending requests for the product requests, feature requests. But it's there now, and I think it has some potential, and I'm sure some people will use it. And it could be that maybe it's more appropriate to a business environment, and they just released it to the education options because it's just part of the process that they do. So
yeah, I think, Paul, that agree with what you're saying, Dave. A lot of the features are about choice. So there's multiple ways of actually creating a piece of workflow or a piece of procedure. And all that Google are demonstrating here is here's another way in which you might want to create that piece of workflow. And for some organizations or individuals, it might be an easier way for them to do it. But there are equally other ones where the organizations have already got those workflows and approval processes and everything else in place. So, evolve your things and use the right tools for the right job. So choice is always good.
Very much that. So July the 3rd, as I said earlier, for the next update, that will be the last update for this school year. We'll do August's and July's in early September, so it'll be a busy one, that first one back. And you'll get notification from Chris as always. Thank you very much for coming along, everyone. Lovely to see you all as always, and I hope